All right, so we're going to do our little kind of news roundup PTI style session here, just to go through a couple of stories pretty quickly. This was interesting to me. A bunch of horsemen's groups like the THA and TOBA and NITHA and all these horsemen's groups wrote a letter to the FTC yesterday, released it yesterday, quote, to express their deep concern with the proposed HISA 2026 budget. Now, the HISA budget in 2025 was approximately $81 million, according to the letter. The 2026 proposed budget only provides a year-over-year decrease of under 4% to $78 million. Quote, the industry has no recourse other than to oppose the proposed budget due to concerns as to its impact on the health of the industry and to recommend that HISA re-examine its budget with the goal of at least a 30% reduction. Now, this is a lightning rod issue. Mike Rapoli came on and yelled at me about it on the 100th episode. And he's basically was like, could we do what HISA does for 40 million? And my answer was, I don't know. Mm-hmm. So we're going to have Lisa Lazarus on the show next week to kind of go over the budget in greater detail. But I kind of want to open it up to Jon as someone who pays these bills. West Point obviously pays some of the HISA fees as well, but I don't personally do it. Jon does as the general manager of a stable. Jon, what's your impression of HISA and, how expensive it is and whether or not we can be more efficient?
Well, I think that there's two different things at play here. Okay. Number one is I think any business, any organization should always look at their own budgets for efficiencies and inefficiencies. And I'm sure that when we talk to Lisa next week, she'll get into the weeds with us as far as what things can and can't be addressed. And look, she's looking at it as, she's running in essence a business also, albeit, not for profit, but still, she still has to come in within certain guidelines in order to get the funding for the following year. So that's first and foremost. The other is, I look at it, Joe, as an owner who is racing horses in what I would say the new world now, which is for the most part, I think that whether the HISA testing itself has actually caught people who are pushing the envelope, or the way that things are set up right now with the number of days that you have before you can use certain medications or procedures, or that it's just a big prophylactic effect and it's scaring people into kind of towing the line and not pushing the envelope anymore. Whatever it is, I'm not seeing on the eye test as many horses in races where you go, there's no way that should have happened, or there's no way that this improvement should have occurred going from one barn to the next. I'm just not seeing that as much. Are we getting the high profile, cheaters in essence? I don't think necessarily that the trainers that I thought were taking advantage of medication rules are the ones that are, in the crosshairs right now, or the ones that have been, found guilty through drug testing. And that may be coming down the pike, on the investigative side. But I think overall, if you say, is HISA doing the job that we need to make things more fair? Absolutely. Now, there's a cost to that. I don't know if the cost should be 20 million, 40 million, 80 million, or anywhere in between. But I can see it that races are more fairly run, and that when you run a horse in a race, you're not going down the past performances or the overnight and going, oh shit, so-and-so has a horse in this race, I'm screwed. And I think that's really, to me, as a horse owner, that was the main part of what I was hoping for, is just to make things on an even playing field. And if my horse isn't as good as your horse, then so be it. But I don't want my horse to be running against a chemically enhanced horse where we don't have a chance, even if we're on our best day. So I think our conversation with Lisa next week is going to kind of flesh out some of the finances of it. But if you say to me, is HISA working in the sense that is it making races, more fair? I think absolutely.
Yeah, well, and that's something that people say. It's like, who have they caught? Who have they caught? You look me in the eye as a regular horseman and tell me that you don't feel like you're on a more level playing field now, that you don't see the re-breaks, that you still see the re-breaks that you used to see. You don't.
Right.
You don't see the horses going 44, 108, and then getting headed in the stretch and coming back and winning by open lengths. You just don't see it. So like you said, I think it's a deterrent effect, if nothing else. So I completely reject the argument that things haven't gotten better from a level playing field, from a fairness standpoint, or from a safety standpoint. So I completely reject that. The different argument is, how efficient can we be? How efficient are we being, and how efficient can we be? And that's a legitimate argument that I'm not privy to the budget, that I can't answer. So I'm looking forward to having Lisa on. But there might be a fair point that, there's certain bloat in the budget, of any major organization. It happens sometimes. So I'm looking forward to having that conversation and seeing, maybe where we can do better. The other thing I want to say is, part of those expenses have got to be fighting these frivolous fucking lawsuits that have been brought against them, and the nonstop HBPA back and forth in all the courts. That has to be at least part of the budget. All of those lawyer fees, they're not paying those. Lisa and the team are not paying those out of their own pocket. So I think you got to look inward in that way. Like, if you're a horsemen's organization, if you're an association that represents horsemen, tell everybody to stop suing, and then maybe you would have a little bit of savings, because it's just, and we know it's not going anywhere. Like, how many times will the different judges strike it down or kick it to a lower court before you realize that this is the law of the land, at least for now, and we got to work together and make it as good as as efficient as possible. Like, to me, that's one of the things they don't mention in the letter, obviously, is all of the litigation that HISA has had to go through with the kicking and screaming of some of the horsemen's associations that refuse to accept it as the law of the land. So once you tell those guys to go away and those lawsuits to go away, then I think you have more of a leg to stand on to bitch about the budget being too high. So I'm looking forward to having Lisa on next week, and we'll try to get to the bottom of it, because I'm not objecting to the fact that there could be more efficiency in the budget, but we're going to see. We're going to talk to her.
And Joe, can I just jump for a quick second? So since we are teasing this up and we are going to have Lisa Lazarus on our show next week, if you have questions for her or for the organization that you want us to ask, please send it to us in advance.
Write it in the comments or DM us.
We're very accessible, and we want to have these questions so we can have an in-depth conversation. We don't get Lisa on the show that often. She doesn't do very many interviews on a show like this. So it's an opportunity for you have a bitch, you have a complaint, you have a concern, or you have a question. Send it to us so that way we can voice it on the show. Sorry.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, I'm sympathetic to the idea that it's too expensive. But yeah, we'll talk about it. And if you have specific questions, let us know and we'll ask them to her. All right. One other thing I wanted to touch on real quick. Monmouth Park's meet wrapped up recently, and I'm reading from Matt Haggerty's article in the DRF. It says total handle at the recently concluded Monmouth Park meet fell 16.1%. As the track struggled to fill races during a crowded summer calendar. Total handle dropped $44.2 million from $212.7 million handled during a 50-day meet last year to $178.5 million during a 49-day meet this year. Despite racing only one fewer day, Monmouth carded 34 fewer races this year, and average handle per race dropped 9.7%. Field size was also down. Field size was 7.52 per race last year, 7.04 this year. That's a major drop, to lose half a horse per race year over year. 2 years ago, it was even higher. It was 7.71 horses per race. And I'm worried about Monmouth Park. We talked about Monmouth earlier this summer and how special it is to us, especially John, during Haskell week. And if you look at the attendance, they're averaging still like 6,500 people a day. They got like 15,000 people on Mother's Day. They had 41,000 people on Haskell Day. So they're clearly doing something right in terms of bringing people to the track. But they own the regular horse players who aren't there just on Haskell Day are not going to keep betting races that only have 6 or 7 horses in it all day long. And to me, this goes back to, again, and I'm a broken record on this, and I'm not the only one, is how unnecessarily crowded the Mid-Atlantic racing schedule is. And I just have to keep beating this dead horse that why can't people get in a room and figure out how to work it best for every track, for Laurel, for Delaware, for Monmouth, for Colonial, to all those tracks in the area. Why can't we have one unified racing calendar that benefits all of these tracks? Why are they all running on top of each other in the summer? It makes no sense. You're competing for the same horses. It's not good for anybody. The product at Delaware sucks. You know, the product at Laurel is mildly better, but it's not great. And product of Colonial, if they didn't have that turf course, would be terrible too.
Right.
Yeah, it really frustrates me. Obviously I come at it from a Monmouth-centric standpoint because I think Monmouth is one of the top 5 tracks in America to visit. And they're in a tough spot because, they do get kind of subsidies from the state government, but they don't get direct casino subsidies, which a lot of other racetracks have and that survive on. I don't know. I'm very, very, very worried about the future at Monmouth Park. When 16% year over year, that is a major, major loss in handle. And it sucks for me because I look at this as a very, very fixable problem. And as is typical of racing so many times, people cannot unify, can't get in a room and figure some shit out to help all of these tracks stay in business.